I'll be the first to admit that that got away from me. Suspiria, released 1977, directed by the legendary Dario Argento, starring Jessica Harper, photographed by Luciano Tovoli. A very, very strong yes, you should watch this movie. Only reason you may not want to watch it as a horror fan is if you're in the mood for something a bit more action-packed and faster paced tonight, something not so artful, and that's totally fine. Sometimes I just need a real white-knuckle, mindless heart thumper too, in which case, yes, wait till you're in the mood for something more artful, but absolutely come back to this movie when you can really let it wash over you. Okay, reason number one you should watch Suspiria, and I could probably just end it after this one because number one is the thing that everybody already kind of knows about. It's the visuals, but don't skip away because if you've already seen the movie or you already know that I was going to say visuals, just hear me out because I'm going to go slightly deeper than you might think. So here we go. By the way, it's going to be really, really hard breaking this out into just a bunch of like reasons. Some things are so rad that you should not have to try to convince somebody of their radness. It's like trying to convince somebody of why pizza is awesome. Like it should be self-evident. Like pizza is just incredible and you should like it because you have a beating heart in your chest and you're not a little idiot. I'll be the first to admit that that got away from me. So that's why we're making this video, to list out the reasons why, if you haven't given Suspiria a chance, you should. And also, if you're a fan of Suspiria, there's lots of stuff in this video that you may not know. So when I say visuals, what that breaks down into is the aggregate effect of several things working together. There's the cinematography, the lighting design, the production / art direction and set decoration, all of that combined together to literally paint the screen with this tapestry of color that is just an incredible delight to watch. And I understand that I just used the word delight to describe a movie that opens with a woman's chest being torn open and her exposed heart being stabbed. But let's talk about it. When I first tried to watch Suspiria, and yes, that's right, I tried to watch it as a teenager. I peaced out. I couldn't watch it. At that point in my life, I took one look at the opening scene of her in the back of the car and her being Jessica Harper in the back of the car, and it's raining and there are just these like oceans of color just kind of like swatting across her face as she's in the back of the seat of this car. It's just like red and blue. It looks a lot like this, except in the backseat of that car in that movie, it looks incredible. And here it's obviously, well, it looks like this. But I took one look at it and I thought to myself, holy shit, what a cheap piece of trash that this movie is. They couldn't even afford proper lights. This is embarrassing for them. Where's Freddy? Where's Jason? I don't want to watch this. It wasn't until many years later when I became more of a student of the horror genre and really of just like movies and film itself that I rediscovered Dario Argento and of course Suspiria. What I wish I could go back in time and say to my idiot teenage self is, no dummy, this is an incredible and brave and hyper-intentional artistic choice by the filmmakers. So why brave? Well, first, we have to understand what is informing the visual style of Suspiria. So I already said cinematography, set decoration, production design, art direction. I did leave out the post-processes and the color grading and all of that, which I will touch on. But for the vision of the visual style of Suspiria, what we have to go back and look at is the German Expressionist film movement of the beginning of the century, the 1920s and the 30s. The most famous of which are The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Nosferatu 1922, and Metropolis, and maybe a little bit of Emil. That was a little bit later. Okay, so don't peace out on me just yet. I know you're thinking, whoa, German Expressionist, what? What are you even saying right now, man? I thought we were watching a horror channel. You're talking about German Expressionist stuff. Yeah, I get it. I sound like a douchebag, but bear with me. All you have to know is that Expressionism was a movement in the early half of the 1900s that was just not grounded in realism. Instead, the artists created their art form from a subjective point of view. So that may be simplifying it a bit, and I'm sure I'm going to get called out by somebody in art history, but whatever. Now, German Expressionist film was really just Expressionism in the film medium happening in Germany. So what that means is the films were not striving for cinematic realism. Instead, the realities and worlds built in these films were meant to express and reflect feelings and moods, not be reflective of the real world. So these super interesting, inventive, and visually compelling films all of a sudden burst onto the international stage following the end of World War I, when people are allowed to like German stuff again. For a little while anyway. And then Hollywood is greatly impacted. Dario Argento isn't part of the Hollywood machine yet, obviously, because he isn't born until like 1940 something. But you know, it is impacted by German Expressionist film. Two genres where Expressionist principles make the most sense to be crafting a new reality and not feel so artsy, fartsy, and abstract, but instead like a necessary part of crafting the different world. Horror, right? That makes all the sense. That one is not really a surprise. However, you might not have thought film noir. So think about it. When you think film noir, what immediately comes to mind is like just this super high contrast look, the like hard shadows. You've got the slashes of black and white across people's faces as they're like not even close to Venetian blinds and like a window, but somehow like just like this really sharp light being raked across somebody's face. That's not the way that the real world looks, and yet we don't really question it too much because the whole world is just so cohesive and representative of what's going on in the world that's built. It's distorted, it's angular, it's dangerous, it's black and white, and there's just so much there being said by the look of the thing about good and evil, and then also what's happening in like the gray area. So much about film noir is about what happens between the black and the white, even though everything is black and white. So the visuals inform very, very heavily what it's really like another character in the films. And that's really what Expressionist film principles are meant to be doing. They're trying to express an emotional imperative. Now, Dario Argento becomes famous not for Suspiria in 1977, but bursting onto the scene as a director-writer with Bird with the Crystal Plumage in 1970. Side note, I say he burst onto the scene as a director/writer because he was already on the scene as a writer. Not a lot of people talk about this for some reason, and I have no idea why, but this dude literally co-wrote Once Upon a Time in the West with Bernardo Bertolucci and Sergio Leone. Two absolute legends, Bernardo Bertolucci and Sergio mother effing Leone, as in the good, bad, and the ugly, fistful of dollars, father of the spaghetti western Sergio mother effing Leone. Okay, so Dario Argento knocks it out of the friggin' park with Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which is a giallo, Italian murder mystery with horror slashery elements, and just like a whole lot of misogyny, which is saying a lot because horror. But he does that, and immediately the studios want him to continue making stuff, just to start churning things out because he hit on something, and he's successful in a genre that is starting to blow up, and he made a movie that is blowing up within the blowing up genre. So they ask him to start making things in a similar cloth, and he does. He starts just like churning them out. Some better than others, but averaging like one a year until 1975, when he does Profondo Rosso, Deep Red, my personal favorite of Argento's giallos, and also Rob's, I believe, if you watch his shorts. So sounds like I said if you wash his shorts, which you don't want to do because that dude, his shorts get real dirty. But Anyway, so he has the biggest success with this formula, the giallo formula, and he's proven himself. He's a big swinging dick in Italy, and giallo is a success. It's a big old thing. He's associated with it, and his style is dark, violent, bloody Italian sort of whodunit. It's always just like a cop or a journalist or a writer or something trying to hunt down a murderer. It's a genre, right? And he got really, really good at this genre. So how did he get from top of his game doing this kind of bread and butter, highly successful giallo stuff to Suspiria, which is not a friggin' giallo for those who think that all Italian horror is somehow giallo. It is not a giallo, and someday I'll make a video about what is giallo and all of my favorite giallos, because I do love giallo. But how does he get there? Easy. Another thing that a lot of people don't really give credit where credit is due, he meets Daria Nicolodi in, I always almost say Nickelodeon, Daria Nicolodi in the casting for Profondo Rosso. She is the co-star. She is like the female lead in Profondo Rosso, Deep Red. So he casts her and is the movie's co-star, and they also fall in love and are together for about a decade but never marry. Daria is actually Asia Argento's mother. Don't know if you know that, but anyway. So they fall in love, and Daria is not just a pretty face. She is also a writer, a badass writer, and she has an idea about what else? Her grandmother, who spent time in a ballet school, a creepy ballet school, when she was a young woman. And this creative partnership between Dario and Daria, her ideas and his ideas, lay the bedrock for what Suspiria would become. So the two co-write Suspiria, a director inspired and reinvigorated by a new love in his life and her tremendous creative spirit and ideas, and it emboldened him to break out and do something really big and different with his next film. He didn't know specifically what it should look like, but he knew that he wanted it to feel vibrant. He referenced a primary color palette and Disney's Snow White. He wanted saturated colors, high contrast but soft, the quality of just old color cartoons, colors almost like vibrating. What he had in his mind was a bold Technicolor kind of a look. Think Wizard of Oz when they make it to the land of Oz. He wanted that, but horrific, or at least even more horrific than Oz is, because the Wizard of Oz is horrific, but not in an intentional way. It's a super saturated, almost living cartoon, and that's what he had in his mind. He didn't have super specifics. He didn't know how to execute it, but he knew that that's the kind of feeling that he wanted to evoke. That's where he wanted to drive to. So now we've got the influences. German Expressionist film, early American horror and film noir, a Technicolor living Disney Snow White kind of a look, and all of that driven forward on love's light wings and the creative partnership and energy of Dario Nicolodi. All of this together set the stage for Dario Argento to break from his mold and create a space where others could help make the visuals. I know, that's almost always you get Dario Argento's vision, Dario Argento's singular vision, the man is a genius, all these things, and I don't want to take that away from him, but I think that it's really, really important to call a spade a spade. No, in filmmaking, nobody does anything by themselves, and in this movie that had just such a specific look, it's very, very easy to think one man or woman had a singular vision and executed on it it was just genius. And that's just simply not the case. Dario Argento, like many, many amazing directors, had a singular feeling. He had a broad vision, and just like any good director, he brings in the right people to help him execute and refine those things and take that vision to places that he could never have done on his own. That's what happened in Suspiria here, and that's probably why I love this movie so much. because it's an idea that was dreamed up by two people born from a place of love and then just kind of like shaped collaboratively. You hear Dario Argento, Dario Argento, Dario Argento. You never hear about Dario Nicolodi. You never hear about Luciano Tovoli. And I think it's just a crime. Which brings us to reason number 2. Luciano Tovoli and Dario Argento himself, that partnership together. Okay, so this one's going to be short, because if you think I get riled up talking about horror movies, just wait till I get going on photography and cinematography. Okay, so enter Luciano Tovoli, a guy who had zero interest in horror. And I think that hugely helped, because he might not have gone ham on the assignment from Argento in the way that he did if he had had a preconceived notion of what horror should be. Instead, he did what a good cinematographer does, and that's execute on the vision of the director in a way that is somehow exactly what the director was envisioning, despite the director not actually knowing exactly what he was envisioning, if that makes sense. And by the way, that's not a knock on Dario Argento at all. That's what a good director does. A good director is a creative leader and says, I want to go over there. That's where we are going, and that's the destination. Now, crew, all right, let's get us there. And he empowers and directs and shapes, not dictates, how the crew gets them over there. He lets the people he's hired build the roads and the bridges and the tunnels and the, whatever that transport the movie to where it needs to go. Luciano Tovoli was like, yes, I'm going to keep going with this analogy. He was like the chief architect of all of those roadways and bridges and tunnels and what have you to get the movie to where it needed to go. Dario just said, over there is where we need to go. People, let's go over there. And the way that they got there, the beauty and the intricacy of the structures and the roadways that got them there from like a top level down, Dario Argento's doing, but also the doing of the people that actually did it, put their hands on it and said, okay, does this get us there? Is this, if I make the lights this saturated, does this feel like a living cartoon? Is this the right thing? And in truth, I think the end result of the movie doesn't really feel like a living cartoon for me. I think it feels like something entirely different. There is that Technicolor vividness, and I'm going to touch on like why that is and how they did that. But I think that the coolest part of filmmaking, and when a director has such like a very specific and new and different idea that's never been done before, in this way at least, are that the accidents that happen that, like the director will look at it and go like, oh, yeah, that's not precisely what I was looking for, but it's actually kind of better. And let's go with that. Because you wouldn't look at Suspiria and go, oh, it looks like Disney Snow White. You wouldn't. But you can see, like when you're told how that was something that inspired Dario Argento, and that he then took that idea and said to a very game and accomplished cinematographer, how do I do this? And then this was Luciano Tovoli's interpretation of it. And then that got us, what we did get. Hey, and if you're interested in some of the things that we've designed for Suspiria, go to our website, thecultofcult.com, and search Suspiria, and everything that we have designed for Suspiria should come right up, plus some deep red Profondo Rosso stuff, and we hope to be doing some new Dario Argento stuff pretty soon, so stay tuned for that, and thanks so much, y'all. See you in the next video. Reason number 3, the color. One of Luciano's greatest successes was the richness of the color. Dario Argento already wanted a rich primary color palette. You can't take that away from him. That was something that he brought to the table and talked to Luciano Tovoli about. Luciano was charged with interpreting that. They accomplished this with a 1-2 punch of production, live production, and post-production magic. On set, Luciano apparently didn't use a single gel or a sheet of color transparency common in photo and film to shift the color of light. Instead, to get the deep richness that we see in Suspiria, he apparently used fabric and velour in front of the light as modifiers to bounce the light off of or through. I don't know exactly how that works because those lights get hot as hell. But apparently, in some of the scenes, he was pushing the lights and fabric so close to the actors' faces that they were afraid that they were actually going to get burned. So, story checks out, but yeah, velour. Think about that. Like that's like a fabric that doesn't. It's not a very opaque fabric, but he just wanted that richness because gels. Yeah, sure. If you take a look at light pass through a gel, it doesn't get the same level of saturation that you see in the final product of Suspiria. And by the way, there is a difference in color between saturation and richness of color. And the richness of color that you get in this movie is absolutely wild. And like, yes, there's something that they did for this movie that was different, that is just not your typical film technique. And then once you hear that, the things that they did, you're like, okay, it feels like magic. It's like the work of a technician, it's craft. And I just think that that's so cool. I said it was a 1-2 punch live. The way that they shot it, plus the post-production process. Suspiria was one of the last films ever to employ a Technicolor dye transfer process at Technicolor Rome. By doing this, they could much more precisely target those specific colors in any frame and really make them punch hard. That's why the reds, the greens, and the blues in this film hit so dang hard. If you're interested in learning more about the process, and if you want to go deeper on Luciano Tovoli, I can highly recommend the American Cinematographer article written by David E. Williams, and I'm going to link that in the description below. Highly recommend that article because if you're at all a production nerd or you're just sort of interested in this movie and its production, if you're at all a Suspiria fan, I think you're going to find it as interesting as I found it. And it's the reason why I didn't go so deep into Luciano Tovoli, despite having a very, very deep respect for him, his craft, and what he brought to Suspiria. I think the article says it way better than I ever could. So take a look at that. Reason number 4. Cast. This movie has an excellent cast, an excellent sense of characters. The script has just an amazing grasp of characters that would work really, really well together in a story and are brought to life amazingly by the wonderful talent. Special shout out to Jessica Harper, whose big doe-eyed performance really does. It sort of feels like she does feel kind of like a gothic Snow White. She has like these just like big Disney eyes, and I can actually see how Dario Argento was inspired by that and was trying to make a gothic fairy tale. She does actually have that thing. Also, big fan of Flavio Bucci, the blind piano player who really only has like one big performance moment in the movie, but he just crushes it, and he like makes me chuckle every time. You'll see what I mean when you watch it if you haven't watched it already. But Flavio Bucci's probably my third favorite in the movie. Second favorite is the Joan Bennett character. She's like the head dom of the ballet, and she wears these amazing dresses. Like her wardrobe is just fantastic, and I think she just really brings something of like old Hollywood to the role, and I think it's really, really, she was very well cast. Although she really doesn't get as much screen time or performance moments as I would have liked, because I find her so compelling on screen. Okay, phew, I know that was a lot. If you couldn't tell, I love this movie so much, and I could talk on and on and on about it, and I feel like I have. So to the remaining 6 people still watching this video. Thank you so much. And if you like it and you want to see more of this stuff, please hit like and subscribe so that, I don't know, the algorithm does what it's supposed to do. Comment down below, let us know if you liked this, or if you hated it, that's cool too. Like, I want to get better at this, and I don't want to make shitty videos. I really want to be doing stuff that people appreciate and like. So please comment down below and tell me how I could be making these better. It'll probably be talk less, and I get that, or, you know, change your stupid mustache face, which I completely understand.